What is climate finance? It refers to local, national, or transnational financing drawn from public, private, and alternative sources of financing that seeks to support mitigation and adaptation actions that will address climate change.
When we speak to our leaders and we tell them about climate change mitigation and adaptation, one of the questions that they usually ask us is, okay, if we implement these actions, how are we going to ensure that we address issues like poverty? How are we going to ensure that we grow our economy?
It is on this basis that the financing of climate change-related projects are hinged. At a recent Debt for Climate Swap conference led by the Commonwealth, the issue was ventilated.
Ultimately, Belize doesn't need a debt for climate swap. Belize needs debt relief, climate resiliency, and most importantly, sustainable human development.
Developing countries such as Belize simply do not have the human, technical, financial resources to address the impacts of climate change.
And we are not going to recognize the goals as set in the various global agreements without a certain amount of investment.
To help achieve these goals, the government of Belize works along with several multinationals, including the United Nations Development Programme. The UNDP works in 170 countries and territories with an aim to eradicate poverty, strengthen gender equality, close the energy gap, and enhance national prevention and recovery capacities for resilient societies.
Climate change fundamentally undermines national and global development goals. And so that's why it's important to do that. And in that context, UNDP's focus has been in terms of addressing building partnerships and building also national capacities for planning and management to address climate change.
So, to build capacities for more vulnerable countries, financial assistance is sought from countries with more financial resources.
Support that is made available to developing countries by developed countries for climate action. And what is climate action? So climate action is anything that works towards curbing greenhouse gas emissions, so CO2 for instance, or for building resilience and taking adaptation action. Why climate finance is really critical, because at the core of the climate regime is the concept of historic responsibility. There are countries that have been the main drivers of climate change because of their industrial activities, and those are the developed countries. Secondly, there's also the concept or the principle of the polluter pays.
A host of climate change projects are supported through the Global Environment Facility, the GEF, and other programs funded by specific partners.
We've also been involved in projects such as the Global Climate Change Alliance funded by the European Union and the Japan Caribbean Climate Change Project, which also would have supported and addressed the aspirations of Belize in terms of addressing the issues of climate change. That addressed a number of areas, including food security, including agriculture, coastal resilience, climate information, and early warning systems.
We've worked successfully, I would say, in the context of the Green Climate Fund to set up a program that would build our capacity. It's called a readiness program. So that would help our institutions better access funding. Belize, along with other small island developing states, piloted the concept of simplified access to the Green Climate Fund.
Also helping the government of Belize in its climate change communication, coordination, and mainstreaming is the Protected Areas Conservation Trust, which started operations in 1997.
With the Global Climate Funds, which are two, we have the Adaptation Fund and the Green Climate Fund. The Green Climate Fund, both of them operate on a modality of direct access, meaning they provide a mechanism for institutions to be accredited to access those funds directly.
Based in Belize, the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center, which coordinates the Caribbean region's response to climate change, is the only regional accredited entity for the Green Climate Fund. PACT is the only locally accredited entity for the Adaptation Fund. PACT funds and works closely with the Ministry of Economic Development as the national designated authority for the Global Climate Fund.
GCF promotes country-driven access to climate finance, and so the MED's role as the NDA is to ensure that the projects that are being designed and submitted for funding are aligned with what the national priorities are, and that those projects are supporting the climate agenda of the country.
PACT has been accessing readiness support funding to build the capacities of executing entities despite challenges of institutional capacity to support the implementation of national frameworks and policies related to climate change. This will help with the design of strong projects to improve access to climate financing.
One of the key aspects of the project cycle that they also place emphasis on when looking at these projects is one's ability to be able to manage environmental, social, and gender safeguards. And so that is one key area that PACT has been targeting in terms of the training that we have been providing for our staff, our partners, and our stakeholders.
There is a demand for developed countries to deliver on promises made under the UNFCCC.
On the basic commitment of providing finance, not only for mitigation, but as I mentioned, adaptation to the climate impacts, and those should be at full cost. The second thing is that there's been, since 2009, a commitment from developed countries to deliver 100 billion per year by 2020, which was last year, a commitment which they have not yet met. The third thing that Belize has been advocating in the context of other small island developing states asks is that we gain prioritized access to public sources of financing.